Hello, third graders. Hey, third graders. All right, today we are going to continue our learning about force and motion. Yesterday, you watched a Bill Nye video and you learned about what is force. And I hope that you learned that force is the push and pull of objects. So anything that is in motion. Today, we're going to continue our learning and we're going to get started with a mystery science. So, I want you to be thinking, how is force being used in these situations?
Hi, it's Doug. In today's mystery, I'm going to give you three tough problems involving something called force, and I want you to think about how you could solve them. Let's take them one at a time. Here's the first problem you face. Could a bunch of kids beat a bunch of adults in a game of tug of war? That might seem impossible. What if the adults you were up against were all weightlifters, like her? Or what if they were all in the army? Even if you had a whole bunch of kids on your team, like 25 kids, you're still not going to come close to beating a team this strong. But this is a little unfair. Adults like these devote their whole lives to being strong. So let's make it more fair, shall we? Let's say that you and your friends, maybe even an entire class of kids at school, are going to play tug of war against a bunch of teachers. Then what would happen? Well, let's watch people do just that. This is a class about to play tug of war against dozens of teachers at their school. Okay, the students put up a really good fight, but the teachers still won. They're just stronger. Now, you might think that there's nothing you could do to change that. The adults will just win every time. But not so fast. Let's think it through. You could think of tug of war as a game of pulling. You pull on a rope to make the other team move in the direction of your pull. The adults are pulling on the rope to move your team this way. I'm using an arrow to show the direction of that pull. Your team is pulling on the rope to move the adults this way. So I'll show that with another arrow. But the adults are way stronger than your team. So I'm going to show that by using a longer arrow for the adults' pull, meaning they can pull harder, and a shorter arrow for your team's pull. Shorter meaning you guys can't pull as hard as the adults can. The adults' pull is stronger, and so your team loses. So sad. Is there anything you could do about it, though? Well, you could get more kids to help pull, and if you got enough kids, you could eventually pull even harder than the adults. That's one way you could win. But the challenge here is, could you beat the adults with just a classroom of kids? So let's pretend that you can't bring in anyone else to help you. You can't increase the overall strength of your group. Is there anything else you could do to win this tug of war against the adults? See if you can come up with some ideas.
Okay, so right now I want you to stop and I want you to think about some ideas. How could you help those kids beat those adults? What kind of force could you use? On your slide right now, I want you to jot down some of your ideas in the table. So I want you to do that now. Welcome back. I hope that you have gotten some awesome ideas down. I can't wait to see the ideas that you have. Let's see what they do on here.
I want to show you something you might not have noticed or thought about. Look at the adults' feet. Now, let me show you part of the video again, and pay attention to their feet. You see what they're doing there? Do you see what's going on? In order to pull the rope, they have to push their feet against the ground. I can show that using this arrow, which I colored red, meaning it's a push. Now, the kids team, they have to do this as well. They have to push against the ground in order to pull the rope. You would think of tug of war as being a game of pulling, but we can see that in order to pull on the rope, you have to be able to push backwards against the ground. So it's just as much a game of pushing as it is a game of pulling. Does that give you any ideas? Take a few moments to stop and think about this. Is there some way to stop the adults from being able to push against the ground? Come up with any ideas you can, even if your ideas are a little silly.
Okay, so can you come up with a way to stop the adults from being able to push against the ground? I want you to see if you can think of that and add that to your slide now. All right, welcome back. Let's see if we can find out how we might be able to help them.
There definitely are some things you could do. What if you could put something slippery under the adults? Like a patch of ice. Now, maybe that's a little unfair, but let's think about it for a second. It would work, and that's interesting. When the adults try to push backwards against the ground, their feet would slip. Now, another idea is that you could also put the adults in roller skates. If you do that, now the adults are going to struggle because roller skates roll, meaning the adults won't be able to push themselves against the ground. Your team would have the advantage, and you'd win. So what we did here to solve this problem, to figure out how a bunch of kids could beat a bunch of adults in a game of tug of war, is we thought not just the obvious pulling that's involved, but also the pushes too. By spotting all the pushes and pulls, we were able to see a new solution to a tough problem. As you're going to see today and over the course of the next few mysteries, being able to spot the pushes and pulls around you is what helps us to see and do some amazing things. You'll see that pushes and pulls are actually everywhere around you. Just about every action you can think of is some form of a push or a pull. Think about it. A shove, that's a push. A stretch, that's a pull. Tug, smack, drag. You know verbs, right? Pick almost any action verb. Squeeze, pinch, yank, lift. You'll see what I mean. Think about each action. It's either a push or a pull.
All right, so now what I want you to do is I want you to think about the actions that are on the screen in front of you. I want you to think about each one and tell yourself, is it a push or a pull? I want you on your slide to answer those questions. Then I want to challenge you. What are some other verbs that you can use that would show a push or a pull? You are going to go to the slide and you are going to answer those in there. All right, let's keep learning.